not alone to show me the way. You wanna be a part of Sunset Boulevard. I woke up after midnight once or twice.
See, I have to make sure every time I don't keep singing, because Theron would be mortified if he'd hear me singing his beautiful song. Once again, that's from my brother, Theron Roberson. He is one of our fundraising partners. You can hire Theron to come to your party to play for you. He's great, wonderful professional, great guy. He loves our veterans and he does a lot of things. So all you have to do is go to our website right there, communitypayitforward.us, and go to Community Dare to Care, and you can find Theron, find out more about him. Give us a call. We'll definitely hook you up. He's he's a great friend of ours. Hey guys, this last weekend we did our first of many community yard events or yard sales. Name is a little misleading because they're not really yard sales. We give away anything that we call life critical needs: clothing, furniture, housewares, stuff like that. Anything that you need to survive, we give away for free. If it's donated to us, we give it away for free. We do have some wonderful hats that have been donated by our friends at Zephyr Hats in Loveland. We do sell those to try to get the donation dens up and running again, to take and pay some of our bills. Usually we try to cook up some hot dogs, chips, sodas, stuff like that. We're just having a lot of fun. We take in donations of clothing that day. We take in donations of kids' clothes. Right now we're not bringing in any furniture because, I don't want my yard to look like a yard with couches and stuff on it anymore. So we actually had a young couple who came and picked up our couch, and I couldn't have been happier. The guy asked, well, I need help loading it up, and I was already picking it up by myself to put it in there. So it was kind of funny, but we met some really wonderful people. Once again, like on the 22nd, we learned some great stories. We learned about people who have fought addiction, and one way or another, whether it's Christ, whether it's just seeing what their life was going to be, trying to pull themselves up. They've pulled themselves up. They've changed their lives, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And I think that we need to make sure that we always support them, always take and really do our best to make sure that we as individuals, when somebody goes through such a wonderful transformation and improves their life, we really ought to make a big deal out of it, because it is a big deal. We all know that, one of my favorite sayings is, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. We all go through changes in life. And when we're doing something to better our lives, you're not only bettering your life, you're also bettering other lives. So, please make sure that if you get a chance, you see somebody who's having a hard time with trying to become sober, or trying to quit smoking, or trying to defeat, drugs, getting out of a terrible relationship, whatever it is, be supportive of them. Make sure that you sit there and make sure that you stand behind them. We're going to be talking to somebody here in a little bit who she had a very tragic situation, something that, in my eyes, and this is not trying to placate her, in my eyes, it makes her a superhero, because I couldn't imagine the pain that she went through, and she's turned it into something that it's heartbreaking, but it's a beautiful thing that she's doing for the people in Australia. One of the great times, and I've made this joke a couple times today, but I get to make it again. Welcome to the Doctor Who version of Pact, because we're going to travel to tomorrow. It does exist. I found this out earlier. So tomorrow's around. So get ready for it. one of the things that you guys all know that I love to do, I am very, very much in favor of quotes. I love quotes. I think that they tell a lot about you and a lot about what you think of. And I found a wonderful, wonderful quote today. It's right there. If you continue to think the way you've always thought, you'll continue to get what you've always gotten. I think that's a great, great quote. It's, once again, that's almost like the addiction thing. If we continue to do the same thing, you can continue to expect the same results. You can't do the same thing and expect a different result. So please remember, once again, let's take care of each other, support each other when it comes time to that. We've got a pretty, I don't want to say dire need, but we've got a really big need right now. Our brother, Brian Gibson of Project Die Hard, is having a really tough time with the FOBs. You guys, anybody who's listened to this show for more than 5 minutes has heard about the FOBs, the forward operating base. And Brian's really going through some issues, and we really need your help. He's got Hope Stock, which is coming up July 29th, 30th, and 31st. Okay, July 29th, 30th, and 31st. These FOBs are going to be taking care of people in our veterans, whether they're just coming out of the service and they're not ready to be back in society. Okay, they need to be led into reintegrating into society. I can't express how much we've heard. It's such a different lifestyle when you go from one extreme of everything's regimented, everything's yes sir, no sir. Sorry, I lost my voice there for a second. Go figure. Yes sir, no sir. Everything you're with people that your life depends on being with these people, to where you're all of a sudden you're on your own, you're back with your family doesn't really understand what you've gone through. They don't understand that you were torn down from an individual and made in the vision of the services. There's going to be some changes that are needed. The FOBs are going to be there to help people through these changes. They're going to help try to reduce the suicide rate, which is 37 a day. Folks, that's over 15,000 this year. Think about that number. That's just our veterans. You want to hear something scarier? That's only 6% of our adults in this country are veterans. So we're losing over 15,000 in a year. What does that tell you about the suicide problem right here in America right now? It tells you that we've got a huge problem. Robin and I, who you're going to be talking to here soon, we even talked about there being the same issue in Australia. Obviously, there's not the same numbers, but we've got a much larger, sample size, to go through. But right now, Brian is looking for sponsors. Okay, you can be part of Hope Stock. You can be a huge part of Hope Stock. You can become a bronze sponsor for $100 to $499. You can become a silver partner sponsor from $500 to $999. A gold sponsor, $1,000, or a $2,000 will get you a platinum sponsor. Okay. Bronze sponsor, you get your logo will appear on a patron board, and you'll also get your logo when we start talking about it right behind me. We're going to put your logo up there. Okay. Silver sponsor. We're not only going to put your logo up here, you're going to get your logo on the patron board, along with you're going to be mentioned in all of their announcements on Project Die Hard. Okay. Gold. You're going to get everything on the bronze and silver. So you're going to get your logo and mentions in the announcements. Plus, you're going to be featured on all the social media for Project Die Hard. And we will run a 30-second commercial for you on the Pact channel. Okay, on the Pact channels. We'll run through August. And that's well past the end date of Hope Stock. Okay, We just want to thank you for helping our brother get the fob open. And then a platinum sponsor you can get for $2,000. You get everything included in the silver and the gold and the logo on the event poster and the t-shirt. And it's just, look, we're talking about money that we know money's tight right now, but this is money to save lives. And we will run a 1-minute commercial on the PAC channels 2 times a week throughout August. So please make sure that you consider getting a hold of them. Right there is the email address, contact@projectdiehard.org, contact@projectdiehard.org. It's well worth it. It is well worth it because this is saving lives. Okay, let's get together. Let's do this together. We've got to come together for this. We cannot lose our heroes anymore. So please contact@projectdiehard.org. All right. Well, it's time that we get on with our show. And we are very happy to, once again, Doctor Who version of our show this time. Ooh. That was my little dream wave thing, whatever it is. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, and my fingers do a dreamwave, but that happens. So we're being joined by Robin of the Rebecca Jane Foundation. Welcome, Robin. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And I can tell you that Thursday is a beautiful day here, so I hope it is for you as well.
That's great. We're also being rejoined by the wonderful Sabrina, our lifestyle promoter. How you doing, sweetie?
I'm doing well. How's everyone doing today?
Very good. Very good. We're grateful that you were able to join us again. And also joining us one more time, great friend, dear friend, Leslie Bradshaw. I just realized this. Leslie, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
This is our first true international show.
Yeah.
There's only 2 of us that are sitting here in the United States right now. So that's actually kind of neat. It's really kind of neat when you think about it, because this is only like my 10th show, my puny little show here, but it's great that we get to talk to everybody and tell the great stories about what you guys do. And I just love having all of you on. I love the fact that we got to meet each other through wherever we met each other. And I'm really hoping that we can continue to support each other. Robin, I think we're going to start with you. Okay. Since you're all the way in tomorrow, you can almost tell us, hey, tell me who won the game tonight. That way I can go for that.
Doesn't quite work like that, unfortunately. Otherwise, I could give you, lotto numbers or whatever.
That one would be great.
Yeah. You know what? Look, this seriously would be my luck. You would give me the lottery numbers, and if you've seen the Bounty commercial where the guy spills the soda and it goes onto the lottery ticket, that would be me. That would be me. I had to have the winning lottery numbers, and I'd destroy it. Tell us about the Rebecca Jane Foundation, please.
Sure. So the Rebecca Jane Foundation was started 3 years ago, and it's named after my daughter, who died from SIDS. So what was known then as cot death is now known as sudden infant death syndrome, and she died in 1979. And it was obviously something that parents never want to go through. We were fortunate but unfortunate in a way, I guess, because unlike most parents, we didn't actually go in and find her dead in her cot. My husband at the time actually was holding her. So we did all the things that parents wish that they had of. We did hear something. We did know that there was something wrong, but still it didn't change what happened. And so, it changes your life, because when your parents die, you lose your past. But when your child dies, you lose your future. And that's a really big thing for parents to try and get their heads around. I'm not quite sure what the stats are in the States, but certainly in Australia, 8 out of 10 marriages fail after the death of a child. And that's really kind of quite understandable, because if you think about the pressure that you're under, men and women both grieve differently. My former husband never said my daughter's name again. After she died, that was the way he dealt with it. I wanted to talk about it all the time. So, we were very different, and we were, ultimately one of the statistics as well. But Rebecca was born in 1978, on the 7th of August, 1978, and she had a condition called spina bifida, which ultimately had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that she died from SIDS, but it meant the statistics were it was like 1 in 200,000 as opposed to 1 in 500, which was the stats at the time. So we were a young couple. We were trying to save for a new house, but we were, renting. We were living week to week. We didn't have any money. And to be honest with you, it never occurred to me when she died that we'd actually have to pay for a funeral. I know that sounds really weird, but it's the last thing on your mind. And so we, then had to organise a funeral. And we were very blessed that our parish priest came along, and because we had been so active in the parish, and reasonably well known in the parish as well, they said to us, look, this is really such a difficult time. We would like to pay for Becky's funeral, and they did. They paid for her burial site in a beautiful cemetery in Melbourne, and I just never forgot that kindness. I just never forgot how good that made me feel. And in fact, when my marriage ended, my ex-husband said to me, "You're always down at the church," and I said, but no matter what I do, I can never repay that kindness. And he said, "You've paid it like 100 times over." And all I thought was, well, it obviously meant more to me. So, but it always stayed with me, that goodness and kindness of that gesture of that priest. It just stayed with me always. And so life went on. I became a community educator for what was the Sudden Infant Death Research Foundation, and I would teach ambulance officers and police officers and emergency responders on how to deal with the parents of a baby that may have died from SIDS. I did that for 8 years. And then, I think you go through a phase when your child dies. The first one is you want to fundraise because you want to find out what happened. You want to stop it from happening to anyone else. And then you want to go into support because that's what you want to do. You want to help other people going through the same thing. And then for me, it was about education, because when I went to see people who had someone die, people around them didn't know what to do. I mean, I literally had people cross the street rather than face me, because we lived in a kind of, above a shop. So we were well known by all the shopkeepers and everything. And people literally cross the street rather than having to face me. And in fact, when you're a bereaved parent, you actually become the supporter in many ways. So I remember being in a newsagent, and one of the women from the Young Wives group that I belonged to at the church, she didn't know that Becky had died. And I then, had to explain to her, because she asked where she was, and I had to explain to her that she died. And she literally broke down in the shop. And I don't mean just kind of like a few tears. She was sobbing and I found myself consoling her, telling her it was going to be all right. And all the while thinking, hang on a minute, aren't people meant to be doing that with me? But often what happens when someone dies is that you actually become the consoling person. So I went on to do a lot of grief counselling. So I studied grief counselling. I did some psychology. I just wanted to understand why people don't deal with death very well in Australia, let alone to deal with the death of a child. We're not very good at that sort of stuff. So I went to did grief counselling, and then I did that for a long time. While I was working, I'd volunteer with the SIDS Foundation, and we'd run different groups and parent groups and fathers groups and all sorts of things. And then I was kind of getting to the point where I was starting to worry too much about other people, about being the supporter of the other person. So I decided then that I would kind of move away from that. But that dealing with bereaved people always stayed with me. So I did lots of things in my church, and I did different things. But then I became a funeral celebrant. So for a lot of people in the US, they wouldn't know what that is. It's like being a minister or a pastor without religion, but we do have some religion in it if people want it. So I started conducting funerals, and it was about 3 years in that I did my first baby funeral. And that then became my I guess, facing my fear of what I was going to do with that. And ironically, like, you could not buy a lotto ticket to do this, but the baby that I did the funeral of was exactly the same age as my daughter, died from the same thing. And it was just like, this is going to be your greatest test. If you can do this, you can do anything. So I became a funeral celebrant, and I was a funeral celebrant for 20 years. I still am, but I only do funerals that people know of me. And then during that time, I kept seeing these families with babies. And because I was a bereaved mum myself, I was often asked to do the funeral. And I saw these young couples really struggling. And so I decided then I needed to do something. So I remembered the kindness that I had been given, and I decided that I would start a foundation. So on what would have been Rebecca's 40th birthday, we launched the foundation. And just before we launched, I was privileged to catch up with the priest who helped us. He'd lived in the US, in Wisconsin, actually, for 31 years, and he was coming to Australia to see family. So I flew to Queensland and met up with him. And I remember distinctly him saying, "Robin, I'm so proud of you for what you have done." And I said to him, "But Nick, this is really your foundation, because you're the one that did it for me, and therefore I'm just paying it forward. So if the foundation belongs to anyone, it belongs to you, and it belongs to Rebecca." So so we've been going 3 years. We've helped over 80 families so far, and we just we don't have any direct contact with families. We deal through the social workers at the hospital and the funeral directors, because I believe that, once you kind of put a face to that, then there's a sense of obligation to that person. Whereas if we can keep it kind of on a lighter level of not feeling that, then, if they are in a position, and I've had people say to me, "When we get on our feet, we will pay you back tenfold." And I go, "No, you just have to pay it forward. But, wait till you're on your feet." So I think my favorite movie of all time is Pay It Forward. And I think everybody should have the opportunity to pay it forward, because it goes and makes the world a better place. So we now help. We get no government assistance. All of our stuff is all of our monies is raised just by the goodness of donors who give to us. And we apply for a lot of grants, but as soon as you have that word funeral in it, it counts us out for a lot of things. But that's kind of in a nutshell where we came from and why we started. And I think that from it all, I just continually learn lessons from where it is. And I wrote a chapter in a book called Lessons I Learned. And I started with one lesson and I ended up with 17. But when my final paragraph says, "When I started writing this chapter, I decided on focusing on one lesson, but I soon start to realize that our lives are full of lessons. The lessons I've chosen to share here are only a tiny section of the thousands of lessons that I've learnt throughout my life. Becky was almost 10 months old when she died, and I could write an entire book on the lessons I learnt from her. But that's the thing, though, isn't it? We never stop learning. I believe the question we need to ask ourselves every time we face a difficult, challenging, or even joyful situation is, what have I learnt from this? I think you'll be surprised by the answer."
That's beautiful. And I just want to say it, the same thing that I say to John of Martyred Angels every time he comes on. You're a damn superhero. You truly are, because I couldn't imagine going through what you went through. I thank God I've never lost a child, and the strength to rebound and help other parents. That is such a, I say beautiful quite a bit on this show. I've noticed that the other day, but I'm going to tell you something, Robin. That is such a beautiful story.
Mhm.
It's a heartbreaking story, but it's a beautiful, beautiful story. Your, the Reverend, what he did for you, I understand what you were going, or why that meant something to you, because you're right. I mean, I know when adults die, the last thing in the world you think about is the funeral. But guess what? That's got to happen sooner than later, and then all of a sudden it starts hitting you all at once. Again, I I would like to say thank you for telling us that story, and it is gorgeous. You're gorgeous. I'm speechless, which is weird for me, but I mean, I do appreciate you coming on. When you said that you guys don't do a lot of one-on-ones, we got really close to the family of a young man right before he passed. It was we started following, and we became really good friends with this family right before, or about 2 years before he passed. I'm still great friends. You can see pictures on Facebook with me and his grandmother. I'm giving his grandmother a ride on my motorcycle, on the ride right before Riley passed. And I understand what you're talking about, that it's difficult when you know the families, when you get to know them. It's really difficult when that, and is it almost like reliving it for you?
No, it's not. I actually had one young man actually track me down, and so he used Dr. Google, and after he went to our website, because my story's on there, he then Googled me and found me, and he rang me and he said, "I need to speak to you because I need you to know how much this means to us." He said, "I live in a lovely house. I've got 2 great cars. I've been made redundant. My wife's baby, our baby, has died, and I don't know where my next mortgage payment is coming from." And he said, "I just want you to realize how much this means to me." And I said to him, "Look, that's really lovely, and I'm very glad that that's the case. But I do understand how you feel, because that's how I felt. That's how to the day I die, I will always have a great admiration for, Father Nicholas Punch, who was the priest, and the Catholic Church, who supported us at a time when our whole life had been blown apart, and we had a very small amount of money, of which wasn't enough to cover the funeral." And we said that to him, and he said, "That is for you to start to rebuild your lives."
Is that the way you kind of approach people now? It's like, we're going to help you with this, but how hard is it to tell somebody that, we want to help you with this so you can start to rebuild your life? Do you ever get anybody who's like going, "Restart my life. I just lost my life"? How hard is that to try to tell somebody?
I think, well, because we don't get that, because we don't have any direct contact with our families. But it's a bit like, I've been a funeral celebrant for 20 years, and I actually teach funeral celebrancy. And I say to the people who come and learn from me is that, never walk in and say, what we normally do is, "Hi, how are you?" Because you're going to be confronted with, well, how do you expect me to feel? My wife, my child, my best friend has just died. Like we kind of have to reboot. So now when I go in and talk to families, and I, I do a lot of younger people because of my grief counselling background. I do a lot of unexpected deaths, and I just walk in and I say, how is it all going? So, and my chiropractor said something really interesting to me one day about approaching people. She said, we always used to ask, all of the staff used to ask people, what are you doing for Christmas? And when she said that to me one year, I just said to her, it's not going to be great this year for whatever reason. I think all our kids were, in other states or whatever. And I, she said, I often wonder, how difficult it is. And I said, maybe a good question to say is when that holiday time is coming is, what does Christmas hold for you? And she said, we did it. And she said, and I was amazed at how many people said, oh, I'm dreading this Christmas because of whatever, or, it's not going to be easy because of this or whatever. She said, over 60% of the people who responded to her said that, it wasn't going to be great, whereas they would have just said, oh, we're spending it with family or whatever. So sometimes it's about, how you ask the question of people. I'll often say to somebody that I meet that I may have done a funeral for recently, how's it all going? And they'll go, oh, okay, or whatever. And then afterwards, when we're on our own, I'll just go up to say, how are you really? And it's amazing, by just asking that question, how are you really? They'll go, I didn't think it'd be this tough. I thought like everybody else that once the funeral was over, I was going to be able to get on with my life. And I went away on a holiday to try and kind of cheer myself up, but the grief came with me. Mm-hmm. So, it's about asking people and really, rather than just that, how are you? Just how is it all going? But, then how are you really? Because that really part makes a big difference on how people will respond. I don't even know whether that answered your question now.
Oh, actually, that's fine. That actually is going to kind of lead me up to this. Leslie, you, how do you get the same reaction that, when you approach anybody, and if those of you who remember Leslie, she or those of you who couldn't join us on that day, Leslie helps individuals, especially women, take and find themselves again. Wonderful, wonderful program. Leslie, do you get the same response that you have to be careful on how you word the questions? Make sure that you word it to where there's not an easy out. And I hate saying it like that, but it is kind of like if you ask somebody, how's it going? I've got my standard groovy. I answer groovy no matter when. And I don't know if it's because I'm a dork or it's just because I really like the word. They ask how you're doing today. It's peachy and groovy. So, but when you approach a female, do you have to do the same thing? No. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because like you said, people tend to have their standard response that they like to give, because especially for women, we're taught to not burden people with your problems. We are the helpers. We're not there for other people to help. So usually it's, oh yeah, I'm fine, I'm great, everything's good. And so you really have to kind of dig a little, especially, for me, I can kind of sense people's vibe, their aura, like, okay, something in the way you're responding you're not fine. So it's not to like directly go and try to scare them into thinking, oh my God, something's wrong, I'm doing something wrong. You kind of have to like gently coax it out of them. And eventually when they realize I'm just here trying to help, they open up freely. But yeah, you definitely have to choose your words wisely.
Leslie, we're going to go on ahead and continue with you a little bit, and then we'll get on to a little bit of a group chat. But for those who were not able to be here the last time you were here, can you please give us a little bit about your story? Can you tell us your story? Because like I said, yours is another story that I hate to call it a great story because it comes from a lot of pain, but it's still a great story because you built something from it. So could you please tell us your story?
Okay, well, I mean, thank you for that. I like to say I don't think that my story is that different from a lot of people's story. It's just that I chose my path from my pain. And yeah, I was one of those people who got pregnant young. I got pregnant at 19. So at that point, my family and, the society around me told me that, yeah, your life is over. Your life is now your child's life. You can't go after your dreams. You can't do anything. You are now, your label is now mother and eventually wife, because my mother also told me, well, you can't live with a man out of wedlock either, because we grew up Catholic. And so, yeah, and in all of that, I essentially lost who I was because I was definitely a big dreamer. I had big goals. I had like a vision for myself where I saw myself, and it definitely did not include like staying. Oh, for those who don't know, I'm in Trinidad. I'm in the Caribbean. Yeah, and it definitely didn't include staying on this little island. I mean, it's a beautiful island. I love it, but I wanted to explore. I wanted to see things. I wanted to go places and meet different people. So being told that I have to now label myself as mother and wife and that's it. Like I can't be anything else. I really lost myself for a while. And I tried to, of course, my first marriage did not last because I mean we were kind of forced into it. So it's as much as we both tried, it wasn't meant to be. So the period after I got divorced, I was still lost because I just did things because I was told I was supposed to do them. And I tried filling the emptiness with the typical things that people try to fill the emptiness with, the partying and the drinking and, the random sex and stuff like that. And of course, those things do not fulfill that space, and they actually leave you feeling even more empty. And eventually, I had to be like, this is not working. This is not good for me. I'm not feeling good. I'm like lashing out at people. I'm not doing well. And it's like through talking with friends and stuff like that, I started like reading self-help books. The first self-help book I read was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And that was kind of like my door opening to where I am now. Um, I did do my degree, my background is in psychology, and now I'm a life coach. So it kind of life kind of led me down this path without me realizing that I got led down this path. So like you said, it came from a lot of pain, but right now I understand the path that the people who come to me are walking because I've been in their shoes, I've been in that place. And when they get to work with me, I work with them one on one. We personalize everything because there is no one size fits all remedy for anybody's life. Everyone's life takes its own different path. So we work with what you and your path is to get you to just love yourself and believe in yourself and learn how to tune out the court of public opinion, because that court likes to tell you, okay, you're doing it wrong, or you shouldn't do that because people like us don't do those things, or all the things that people like. And a lot of it comes from a space of love, but it also comes from a space of their limiting beliefs that they're imposing on you. So yeah, when you work with me, it's really about learning to trust that inner voice that says this is for you. That dream, that vision that you have, that is for you. It's not for anyone else to believe in. It's not for anyone else to love. It's for you to go after and you to achieve it. And yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be for other people who I needed when I was going through all that emptiness inside. So,
Okay, you did not. Your dream when you were growing up was not to be a life coach. Uh, what was it that was that paradigm shift though, that when you decided, you know what, I'm going to follow my dream? What made life coach that dream you wanted to follow?
it was really realizing that, like I said, I want to be for other people who I needed. And it was while I was working part time at one of my friends' retail store, just helping them out. And I was made friends with one of the other girls who lived there, and she's like young in her early 20s, and she was into culinary arts, and her family wanted to push her into
Mhm.
business. And I was pretty much the one person who's like, yeah, but no, that you're not happy with doing business. You're happy when you talk about food and photographing food and what you can do. And like culinary arts is where your love and your passion is. And she would tell me, yeah, but I can't. And of course, these are all the limiting beliefs that her family imposed on her. I can't make a career out of that. I can't do this. I'll probably just be a cook all my life. All the excuses as to why going into business was much better. And it was through helping her learn to love and trust herself and believe in her dream, in her vision, and learn how to set those boundaries. Because yes, your family, but you still need to set boundaries with your family also, not just friends and outside societies. Family needs their boundaries too. Like, yeah, this is what I want. This is the path that I'm going to take. This is where I'm going. And it was through helping her get that strength for herself that I realized, oh, this is what I really love doing. Because like throughout my life, I have helped friends go after what they want, but not necessarily to the capacity that I would now and as a life coach. But I've always been that support system for people. And it was that experience, that recent experience with, the girl I was working with. It's like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. And she was actually the one who's like, so why don't you be a life coach? Because you give good advice, you do all those things. And I'm like, because initially I was one of those people who thought that, oh, life coaches are for rich people, it's just some fad. And this is like, what is a life? Why do you need a coach for life? It's life.
Yeah.
Eventually, when I did my research, I was like, oh, okay, it's actually based on psychological principles, and it's very sound and structured. So yeah, it's like my brother actually found me a certification to do, and I got my certification, and here we are.
Isn't it
And
interesting how we are limited by our beliefs of our upbringing, and then people reinforce that as we go along.
Yes.
I didn't cry for 2 years after Becky died because I felt that I had to be strong, and
Yeah.
everybody kept praising me for being so strong that in the end I felt that I couldn't not be strong
Right.
because everybody's thoughts were, isn't she amazing? Like, she's so strong, she's dealt with this so well. And so when I actually kind of got to a point where I actually wanted to kind of do it, I couldn't, because I had all this expectation of all these people to remain this wonderful, strong person that was dealing so well with it.
Yeah.
I joined a board of directors, and my mother would tell people that I was there. It was $100 million credit union, and that she would tell people that I was there to take notes and make copy, because she didn't believe that her daughter could reach that sort of level.
Right. Right. Yeah.
how much damage, and this is a message, this is a question for all three of you. How much damage do you do to yourself when you let their expectations tell you, Robin, you can't cry now because you are so strong. Your daughter died, but you're taking it so well. How much damage do you do to yourself?
You do a lot. Yeah,
Absolutely.
you do so much. I was listening to. Is there echo? Okay.
Yeah, we've got an echo somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. We'll try to get it fixed. But
Okay.
yeah, I think that one of us has a speaker too close or something, but we'll try to work around it.
Okay. Well, I was listening, and Robin and both Leslie, thank you both for opening up because you shared things about each of your lives that's not so easily shareable. Robin, when you were talking, I kept seeing in my mind's eye the flashback to the moment when my sister called me. I was on the road and just left church service, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm driving." She said, "I need you to pull over." And I thought, something's wrong. She knows I can drive, talk, do all kinds of things. So to her instructions, I pulled over. And when I pulled over, in my mind, my corner of my eye, I pulled into, I remembered as if it was yesterday. I pulled into a 7-Eleven, and I was in Seattle, and Seattle has a huge homeless population. And I remember this gentleman who was homeless. He was literally walking, you know, he entered the scene. It was like something out of a movie. I'm still talking to my sister, and I'm telling her I'm pulling in. Well, as I pulled in, I'm watching this guy who you could see off of his aura that he had all the weight of the world on his shoulders, that his life was awful, about as low as it could be. And I literally watched him, you know, he was humped over. He walked along past the opening of the 7-Eleven, slammed his back up against the brick wall, and slid all the way down to the ground. Well, when that man slid to the ground, my sister had told me that my nephew passed away. And in that moment, I wasn't strong for anyone. Forget that. You know, I wanted to be strong for her in the moment, but I couldn't be. So I hung up the phone, and all I remember is I had this big-ish SUV. I remember getting upset from one side of the SUV to the other side of the SUV. I don't even remember if I went to the back seat. I lost it. And that gentleman who had the worst moment in his life, he watched me. And I watched him watch me, and he said, my life can't be that bad. So I watched his shoulders perk back up. I watched him stand up. And he's watching me the whole time. And out the corner of my eye, I'm watching this man like, I don't really care what you think. I'm not being strong for any. I'm losing it. And I have no control right now. That was my nephew. And so before everything is over, I noticed that man perked up his shoulders. He kept looking at me and said, my life is not like that. And he literally like looked at me and said, He walked up, next thing you know, he was walking away. That's how hard it is. The hardest thing I ever had to do was watch my sister lose her child. I can't imagine what it's like. And he was 21 and he had a baby that was on the way. So not to minimize the pain that you went through, but I'm like, I couldn't imagine spending 21 years with your child and then watching him walk out of your life. One of the most challenging things I had to do is be there through the funeral time. And when you mentioned that you had a pastor at the Catholic Church come in and help you, my sister had the same thing. This gentleman from the parish knocked on her door. She didn't even know. It was like God directed him there. And this was like maybe 3 weeks after he had passed, and she was just having such a tough time. And he knocked on the door and told him he understood, you know, that her son just passed away, and if he could talk to her for a little bit. And he came in, sat with her, and had a whole conversation to help her through one of the most challenging times. And when I talked to her today, she said, I've never seen this guy. I don't know where he came from. And I said, you know what? He was either one angel or someone who is very in tune to the Holy Spirit and the direction of God to do what God instructed you to do. And so thank you for what you and Leslie are both doing, turning some of the most tragic life experiences into a triumph. I mean, Robin, for you, when you said that you actually handled a funeral for a child that was, I'm thinking going, this woman is strong. I don't know how she did
I'll tell you, I had a migraine for 2 days afterwards.
I mean, that was a lot to do, and to set aside your own pain in the moment to serve, that's huge. And Leslie does the same thing out of her own personal experience of people saying, this is how your life should be. So you're going to live the life that I want you to live, not your own life. And you're taking that to say, no. I call it no, devil. No, we're not having that scenario. We are going to use what you deemed as a strategy and turn it into something whereby I'm going to help everyone else. And each of you ladies have done that. So, I mean, I'm sitting here going speechless on the inside. So that's awesome.
You
Thank
done
you.
to be able to, what have you done to be able to fight that, you know, what did you do to finally let yourself cry, to let yourself heal?
I think I just got to a point where I just thought I have all this stuff inside me and I need to do something with it. And I think probably, you know, I had started learning about grief and I realized that, you know, what many people don't realize, you often hear of people getting sick after a bereavement or something like that. The tears that we cry of sadness are a different chemical composition than the tears we cry of joy. And so if you withhold those tears of sadness, after a while, your body will take it all in and you may get sick from it. So I started to sort of learn about things to do, and I thought I just felt that I got to a point where, you know, I was probably pregnant at the time. It probably would have been when I first got pregnant with my son, and probably the hormones and everything didn't hurt either to kind of like bring things to the fore. But it was almost like I had to learn that to give permission to myself. You know, I'm sure that you would agree that, you know, giving permission to yourself is probably the hardest thing that we do because of that expectation from everybody else.
Leslie, what about yourself? When were you finally able to take stock of your own self and say, nope, no more, I need to be okay?
It was actually after my second marriage. We got to a point where we had this conversation where it's like, okay, this isn't working, and it was getting to that point in a second marriage where you thought that you had everything together and you figured it out and you realized that, oh, I still have a lot to work on. It was getting to that point and just being like, okay, something is up. Something is not right. Something is not working, because I'm projecting this image of, yeah, I have it all together. You know, just like Robin, I have it all together. I'm strong. I'm doing the things. I'm traveling. I'm loving life. You know, and nothing is wrong. But under the surface, it's like you're still feeling that turmoil, that sea churning up, like that wave is going to break anytime soon. And when it does, hopefully nobody else is on the shore, because it's going to be horrible. So yeah, I was getting to that point and realizing that, okay, something needs to change. I need to change. Something is not right. This is not how I want to spend the rest of my life feeling. So.
No. Well, ladies, again, we'll get back to this, but we need to. How's this for an introduction for Sabrina?
Beautiful.
Sabrina, how you doing, sweetie? I actually got to meet her for the first time just a couple days ago. So this is great being able to like actually say, hey, I know her. So this is kind of cool. How are you doing, Sabrina?
I'm doing well, Zach, and thank you for having us today. To Zach's point, we met each other Zooming in 2020, right? And so we met each other for the first time this week, I think it was.
Yeah. It was actually Monday. Yeah. So yeah. So Sabrina, you are one of the busier people I've ever known in my life. I would start telling people what you do, but I think it would be easier to tell people what you do not do. But I can't think anything you do not do. So tell me, can you tell us a little bit about everything Sabrina, please?
Well, one thing, I'm going to be honest. One thing that I did not do that took me down the path of my business is I didn't take care of Sabrina. I used to solve problems for corporate America, C-suite executives and above. And I was always there, doing things, showing up, getting things done. And there's a stigma when you report at that level of a company. Now, it's different in Europe, I must say. I need America to be more like Europeans. You guys and Australians and Trinidad, you guys know how to take vacation, okay? In America, if you want to take a vacation, all of a sudden you're not dedicated. And I have to take responsibility. So I allowed for that craziness to impact my own personal decisions, which is what we were talking about earlier in our conversation, allowing other people to influence your decisions. So my heart's desire was always to travel. I even celebrate when I go down a different street. Even if I drive down the streets I've never driven down before, I literally go, I start freaking out, So for me to be in one spot all the time was not healthy. So much so that my doctor was asking me, Sabrina, when are you going to quit that job? So one thing I did is I quit the job, I rewrote my life, and now I help others with their work-life balance, and I can identify when someone is really saying, oh, I don't need a break, I have too much work to do, or I just took a break last week. I can see right through it, And like one lady I work with, she's called the BS detector. I'm like, no, don't be like Sabrina. Don't be so unintelligent that you do not take care of yourself. I think Leslie was mentioning it earlier before we got on the show that she literally took time off for Leslie. Mental mind break. I was like, yes, woohoo, Leslie, good job. That's exactly what each of us need to do. So that's what I do at this time as an author. I encourage anyone that no matter what you're going through in the moment, as each of us have our challenges, and we talked a lot about those challenges a moment ago. Death and grief can be one of the biggest things that can take supernatural influence to get over, especially when you lose a child. So one of the goals for writing the book is to pass on my mother's wisdom to the world. And she had such a unique wisdom as a parent that we would tease her when she was on the earth and tell her that even though when she leaves, her wisdom will continue to surpass her being here. And so much so that each of us would tease her and say, Mother, we can hear what you're going to say in every situation. And she would laugh and say, oh, baby, And I'm like, no, you know, and she did transition to be with the Lord. And the point of writing, it is a book that's co-authored with other writers, other authors who have experienced some very tragic moments. And we talk about, what do you do to get past them? What do you do when that wall, that impenetrable, what appears, because the enemy is nothing but a trickster and an illusionist. So when he puts that illusion of that big wall in front of you that and make you think you can't get past it, what do you do to get past it? And one of the things I've always done is drawn on my mother's wisdom. And she helped me through one of the biggest challenges in my life. In addition to, my mother wasn't here when my nephew passed, but one of the biggest challenges that I faced when she was on this earth. And so she always would tell me, baby, she all called us all babies in our culture. My mother, it doesn't matter how old you are, you always be her baby. She would say, baby, mother wants you to learn how to encourage yourself, because I will not always be here. And that in itself always came back, especially when my nephew transitioned. My mother wasn't here. My sister's mother wasn't here. And I call her my sister because we've known each other for so long. Our parents used to hang around each other when we were little babies. So when her mother wasn't here, my mother wasn't here. So we had to draw on everything we could to get past that tragic moment of her losing her child and myself losing my nephew. It was tough. It was absolutely. And actually, I think her mother was here. It was that tragic that I don't even remember some of the people that were there and some that were not, because it was hard to go through.
I know your mom had a tremendous effect on the way that you turned out. She is obviously your why. You talk about her, but it wasn't just you. She also, you've told me before, you've got so many brothers and sisters. What was it about your mom that made her her?
Ooh, that's a good question. She was going to tell it like it was, whether you like it or not. A lot of people today will call it, she's in your business.
Yeah.
And so she would tell all of her extra children, all of her pallbearers were her sons. And if you were to tap one of those guys on the shoulder and say, that's really not your mother there, you'd probably get knocked out, because that's how my brothers are. They're fighters in more ways than one. And so what made her her, she didn't hold back. She said, you know what? She would even come and tell us, I'm in your business. Now that that's established, and then there she'd go, right? So she would say, you know what? I'm your mother first, then your friend. And I think that's what gets lost in a lot of parenting. Parents want to be friends when they should be parents. And so my mother would say, baby, I am your mother, and God is holding me accountable to doing that role. He allowed me to be your parent, so I'm going to be your parent. And she'd go down the path, and she would tell you things whether you wanted to hear them or not. But we respected my mother well enough that we weren't going to say, I don't want to hear all that right now. Something else may happen to you if you did that in the moment. Ask my brothers about one time where they thought it would be an opportunity to not really believe my mother when she told them they had a curfew and they had to come home by a certain time. So they thought, we'll all come together. She can't possibly get us all in trouble. We won't all get in trouble together, but I'm not going to take away their story. That's their story to tell, but let's put it this way. One of my brothers, who was over 7 feet tall, he ran home afterwards. So that's what made her her. She loved us. Oh, you can actually see her picture over my shoulder.
Yes.
and she loved us dearly. There wasn't anything she wouldn't do for us, anything. And I think because there wasn't anything she wouldn't do for us, we respected her so much. We really, really did.
Well, that's just I love talking to you. We talk more than we've ever had before, but it's never enough. What is your favorite, other than Sabrina stories? What is your favorite story in this book?
Ooh, it's not really a favorite story that I told. It's actually one of the most. It was a moment where I was totally let down. It was like, wait a minute, what? Why are you going to treat me different because I have more melanin in my skin? So that's the story I told, is how do you overcome one of the harshest things that happen in America, which is discrimination, blatant discrimination. There was no question or idea, well, did you hear that right? Maybe you didn't understand. No. In the story that I told in the book, the publisher said, Sabrina, you don't have one of the challenges that so many of our other authors have on what to write about. Your mother has so much to give. Which story are you going to choose? And that prompted the publisher to do a training for us. In our back office or in our YouTube, our groups, we have a lot of training. So the publisher did a training, and he told us to tackle, well, pretty much me, because he said, tackle the elephant in the room. What shows up when you enter the room? What is the biggest thing you've always had to deal with? And it's always been that I'm a woman of color. I may be the only woman in the room. I'm trained as a scientist, as architect. And when that happens as a niche consultant, a lot of times I would show up after white men were just fired because they could not do the job. So there were a lot of challenges that I had to address in a matter of a fact way to let them know, you may have acted that way before, but with Sabrina, it stops now. Now, I didn't tell that part of the story of the book, but I told the jumping off, or the first time in my life that I realized in America that I was a woman of color. And a lot of people say, well, how could that be? Didn't you look in the mirror all the time? Yes, but it didn't register because in my mother's family, being that she's Native American, actually, this country is her country.
Yeah.
We have all complexions in our family. Every complexion, from Robin to Leslie to even Zach, So our family are all complexions. So I never thought that I would be treated different because I had more melanin in my skin. I thought I'd be treated based on my skill set and what I brought to the table. So that was like, whoa, wait. I mean, I could tell some stories which I probably shouldn't have told. In fact, I was on a podcast recently on the Women's Network, and I went into detail on how I handled blatant discrimination. Now, I wouldn't recommend that for everyone, but I grew up with brothers, not just the brother that my mother had, but all the other brothers that were those pallbearers. So I handled things a little bit different than most women would be comfortable doing. So the point of it is do not allow, to Leslie, Robin saying earlier, do not allow other people's biases or other people's opinions on what your life should be because of the color of your skin, or because you're a woman, or because you're doing you're cooking and they think you're doing a business. Who are they? When you get to your deathbed, you're going to be in a for your own life. Not for what somebody else thought you should do, or what your friend thought you, or your husband. How about that? And I tell a lot of women, if you don't have a man that's going, now this is what my mother taught me. Let's be specific. if you don't have a man that's going to be in your corner and support you so that you can be a power couple, you need to make, and this is Sabrina now, you need to make a better or an intelligent decision on who you couple your life with. Because, you know, I am single, you know, and I thank God I'm single. I'm having fun being single. But the point of it is, I even have a coach. I even have a love coach, even before have the love of my life, so that she can have that out of the box influence and say, okay, Sabrina, now this does not match the goals that you said you wanted for yourself. Because a lot of times when we're in the situation and our hearts going, ooh, and we're all excited, you know, we may forget about what's important. So I know that sounds excessive, but I literally have a love coach that say, okay, Sabrina, I'm just over here in case it ever happens for you. And then we start the process. How did I even get on that?
Because that's the way this show is supposed to go. I had to move my microphone. I hope you all can still hear me.
Yes.
So, okay, that's great. Ladies, we are closing out, in which I know that there's a reason for them, but these months, you know, February, Black History Month, March, women's, you know, they're annoying to me because I think we need to celebrate people all the time. And I understand that that's coming from a mid-aged white guy. So that's probably, you know, one of the reasons why I feel that way. What can we do to make women feel like, what do we need to do to make sure that we are not even protecting, but celebrating women all the time? Is there anything that we can do? And especially when it comes to women in business, I can never understand why somebody would get more money than somebody else. That to me is just ridiculous. I you know, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Robin, do you guys have that same problem in Australia?
We do.
You do?
We do. We'd like to say that we don't, but we do.
Okay. That, you know, that's really sad to me that we're still in that. We still have that difficulty. You know, and now on top of that, we have everything else that's a difficulty. What can we do? Like, what would you suggest that maybe us four right here, we could say something today that would make people start to think about it? I know this is a difficult question, but, you know, let's make every month, you know, Women Month. Let's make sure that we're taking care of women.
I think my suggestion would be more general, in as much as I think that as a society, we actually just need to learn how to listen. Actually listen, not hear, but actually listen. So I love a couple of quotes that say, you know, we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. Does that tell you something? You know, I think if people just listen to, whether they're, you know, their male, female, child, you know, we have a real lack of actually listening to understand rather than listening to hear, or listening to understand rather than listening to respond. Because while we're listening, we're formulating a response. If you're actively listening, you're actually just listening. And if we listen to everybody, whether they're male, female, or child, our world would be a much different place.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And oh, by the way, I do have an excuse. I only have 1 ear; the other one's deaf. So, you know, I mean, I have 1 mouth, 1 ear. So I'm accepted as being a guy who talks all the time. So just to say, you know, Robin, in response to that, one of the things that we really concentrate on in the company is trying to make sure that we tell these stories. When I first interviewed Leslie, I wanted her to understand that I want people to know you. We'll get to what you do, but I want them to know you. Because and the example I always use is, we will drive past 2 convenience stores to get to one where people are nicer to us. You know, every single one of us will do that. So let's introduce you for who you are. So let us tell you, let us tell your story. And I absolutely agree with that, because I think everybody has a story that somebody somewhere is going to sit there, and as soon as they hear it, they're going to go, that's it. That's what's been missing. That and it might be the smallest thing that you've said. It might even be ridiculous, but that one little thing that you say could really light somebody's life up and go, that's it. That, you know, and so I agree with you. Listening to those stories is so important. Plus, you never know if you're ever going to get to hear that story again.
I actually spoke at a church on Sunday night, and I actually read the 17 lessons that the book contained, which, you know, was about half an hour. And it was really interesting afterwards, because 4 different people came up to me, and each one of them spoke about the lesson that they related to. They were all different. And then one of the lessons said, one of the guys came up and said, I related to 4, and he was able to name the 4 of them. So, you know, there were like 5 different lessons, or 6 or 7 different lessons that people, you know, and each one of them is only a couple of minutes long, but each one of them related to that particular lesson because that's what they heard, because they related to it.
That's that's fantastic. Sabrina, what would you say?
Well, I agree with Robin when she said listen, and one of the things in listening, I ask a lot of questions so that you can understand what the other person is saying, so that whatever you're formulating in your mind's eye, or what you are actually believing to be listened to, you could ask questions to make sure that you have the right position, or you understand what's being said. That's one thing I wrote is, okay, ask more questions to engage, to make sure that you're listening. And the other thing is biases. We need to get rid of our biases. And that's work that's done here. No one else can do that for us but us. So when we are aware of our own biases and how they impact other people, we won't have to have Black History Month, because equality would be equality. We wouldn't have to have Women's Month, because women wouldn't be paid less than others. I remember I was with one company, and it was bought out by another company. And the guys in there, they saw me as their little sisters. So they went in, we had a closed group meeting. I'm like, okay, what did I do, guys? What happened? And these guys literally came in and said, you know, Sabrina, we're not concerned that you can't handle yourself, but the company that just bought this particular organization has such a highly known discriminatory pay structure from women to men that we're concerned about. And I thought, now that's sad. I thank God that they were concerned, and we need more people like my extra brothers, if you will, that had that level of concern. But that concern needs to go from the top down, where the leadership says, you know what? We are going to pay people based on their skill set and their capability, not their skin tone or their sex. Then we wouldn't have to have, you know, Black History Month. Wouldn't have to have, you know, Women's Month, because people were treated equally and fairly, and it was obvious. So this company over time is one of the biggest lawsuits in their history, where women actually sued, the women engineers actually sued the company. And it was yeah.
This is the biker coming out in me, okay? But how in the hell can people see that and it still happens?
But that's
How
a good point.
How in the hell can somebody see that that's going on? How can they come up to you and say, "Hey, there's a problem," but nobody sees it? How does that happen, Leslie? How would you deal with that? How would you ask somebody to deal with that?
To deal with what Sabrina said, like the company.
Well, if somebody was coming up to you and say they had the same conversation that Sabrina just had, maybe they're not as strong as Sabrina, and maybe it was something like, "I really need this job though," whether or not there's this bias. Is that good? That can't be good for them to know
Right.
that, you know, there might be somebody out there who's less qualified than I, but they're making more money. How do you tell them that's unacceptable, and you need to make sure that you understand that's unacceptable?
I'm a very straightforward person, and I tell them that's unacceptable. I don't sugarcoat. I don't like if I realize that you're whoever I'm working with or talking to, even if it's just a friend, if I realize that you're indulging, then yeah, I would tell you like it is. That's not acceptable. We need to formulate a plan. You need to decide what it is you want, because it's unfortunate to have to go through those experiences, but you can't change other people's opinions. You can't change how they act. You can't change what they do, but you can change your response to them. So yeah, you may need a job, but it doesn't have to be that job. So let's start to figure out. You may have to stay in the job while you find another job, sure, or you open your own business or whatever it is, but you have to realize that, okay, what is it that I can control? I can control what I do, I can control how I respond, and work from there. Like what is it that you see for yourself in this whole situation? Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it just that story just floors me that somebody had the outright knowledge that it happens. And see, these are the things that I guess, well, I there's no guess about it. These are the things that I don't see because of, you know, I am that middle-aged white guy, so I don't see these things. But and I don't understand it, but we do try, because I would like for us to start right here, you know, start to make these changes, to tell people it's not okay that, you know, this happens, yet you're telling Sabrina, but you're not popping that guy in the mouth for allowing it to happen. You know, of course, we're not condoning violences. Please don't go out and hit your boss. Okay. I've had a
Don't do
lot of
it.
terrible bosses too, but let's not do that. But, you know, I mean, the truth is that you can, you know, if you see a problem, the saying, you know, if you're not doing something, you're doing nothing. And that right there is one of the biggest examples I have ever heard in my life. You can see something that's happening, yet you're going to tell you, yeah, but what is that going to change? You know, other than make you aware, which is a good thing. But good God, that's horrifying. You know, and so what can we do today? What's one thing that we can do today that you think we could make a huge difference for the life of women?
Huh. I think it's like what Robin said, you know, listen. And listen from a clean space. Like everyone has biases. Like stereotypes exist for an actual purpose. We just took stereotypes to a different level. But just listen to understand where her mind is, what her experience of the situation is, because we all know that like 10 people can look at the same scenario unfold and you get 10 different stories. It's the same thing. Listen to what, like, just be open to having a conversation. And I know sometimes it feels uncomfortable to ask certain questions, which is why a lot of people don't bother to ask the questions. But there are a lot of us who are very open to answering your questions. The questions may sound like you're being biased or stereotypical or anything like that, but when we understand that you're coming from a genuinely curious place, we're more open to responding to you on those questions. So it may feel like an uncomfortable question to ask because, oh, you can't say that to a woman, you can't. But of course, you have, like I said, you have to know the woman you're talking to, because some women will still be triggered and be like, you can't ask me that. But you can find someone who is open and willing to respond to you, because they, like I said, they can see that you're genuinely curious, you genuinely want to understand, and have that conversation. And it may not change much, but it starts with one. It starts with one conversation.
Sabrina?
I think Leslie hit the nail on the head. I think you ladies are great. I could sit here and listen to Leslie and Robin and be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Do we have unlimited success coming up?
And then Zach, I like your response too, because I never thought of it from that perspective. I'm like, yeah, why didn't they? So you learn a lot doing these. When you're in the position where you're helping others, you're getting a lot of help. I don't know how if Leslie and Robin would agree with that, but I learned a lot today just being here. So, and I forgot what you asked me, Mr. Zach.
I was just asking, what is one thing that we could do today to make a difference to women of the world?
If we celebrate each other, you asked about women, so if we celebrate women more often, it's a lot to have to carry a child to term. It's a lot to have, there's a lot of things in society that's overlooked that should be celebrated. And some people will say, well, I just stay at home and take care of the house. Just stay home. You know how much work that is? I couldn't do that unless I had a butler and a maid, plus some other help that I can't even think of right now. And I don't even have any children. Does that make sense? So we need to celebrate. So we need to celebrate each other, and it starts by celebrating ourselves. Yeah. We have to take time and celebrate ourselves. And I think now I'm thinking out loud with you guys. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. Okay. So I think we have to learn to love ourselves more, because when we love ourselves more, there are certain things we're not going to stand for. We're kind of like, oh no, you crossed the line, and you will never cross that line again without thinking twice.
That's great. Robin, I'd like to ask you this question, and then you have a poem that you would like to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So my aspect on this is probably a little different, but we have this thing in Australia called the tall poppy syndrome. So as soon as anyone starts being really successful, others cut them down. So they, and women do that to other women, sadly. It's not just men. So I think everybody has to kind of get on board with being respectful and being kind to one another, because, that's just, it's so cruel what some women do. It's like if you're going out somewhere and you're wearing something and you kind of like, oh, I can't wear that because I wore that last time. Nobody looks at a man and says, oh, he wore that same suit last time. They just don't even think about it. And the women kind of like go, I can't do this, because they'll all remember me, So, I think we all have to be kinder to one another. And yes, I do. I, as well as being a funeral celebrant, I also write poetry. I have 3 books of poetry, but they're all funeral related. But I just, because of what I spoke about earlier, I just wanted to leave it. And this is called A Message to My Family. And it's from somebody who loves you that's no longer here, whether they're a baby, a spouse, whatever it is, a parent, whatever. But it's called A Message to My Family. And it says, I look down on you, the family that I love, from the heavenly place somewhere up above. I see your tears, I feel them too, although you may not be aware that I am watching you. You see, I've never left you. You know I'm in your heart. And while I'm no longer on the earth, we're never far apart. So when you feel that breeze just go past your ear, know it's me telling you that I am still quite near. Although you cannot hear me, I still want you to know that my love for you has never changed, even though I had to go. Just close your eyes and think of me, and I will give you strength to make you smile and laugh again. I would go to any length. So I go now on my journey, leaving my love as my legacy. Just look to the sky at night, and I'll be the brightest star you can see.
Wow.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Robin, how do people get a hold of you? How can we get a hold of you to try to help support what you do?
Sure. Our website is RJF, so RebeccaJaneFoundation.org.au, and you can always contact me through that as well. So, and my email is robin@rjf.org.au.
Thank you so much for being the inspiration you were today. Thank you for joining us. Please feel free to come back anytime. Your story meant a lot, and I appreciate it. But thank you. Leslie, how do people get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, lesliebradshaw.com. Really simple stuff. Or if they want to email, it's leslie@lesliebradshaw.com. Again, very simple. I like to keep things simple. And if you want, like, the place you'll get the most immediate response with me is Instagram. So that my handle is @LeslieBradshawLC.
Well, I thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out of your time out and coming and talking to us. And please know that we're always here for you, as you're always there for everybody else. Just understand that, you're one of my favorite people. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sabrina, my dear, how do we get a hold of you? First off, how do we get a hold of this?
Limitless Success. It's on Amazon and Kindle. So you can go out to Amazon, grab your copy, get a couple for friends, and give it away. You can also reach me on Instagram at S as Sabrina, D is in Delta Travel 1. I'm also on LinkedIn as Sabrina, thelifestylepromoter.com. You can search for me that way as well. And then email is support@thelifestylepromoter.com.
Well, as always, thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody, remember that Leslie is also one of our great Community Pay It Forward fundraising family members. She's one of our partners. If you were to hire Leslie, ladies, hire Leslie, and she will donate a portion of what you give her. She'll donate a portion to a cause to try to help foundations, to try to help families. She's trying to be part of the solution. So make sure that you go to www.communitypayitforward.us, www.communitypayitforward.us, and look up Leslie. Or new toy here, you can go right here and scan this thing, and you'll have all of our partners, which we get to update all the time. That's our new job form. Shop with any of these partners, and they will donate to the mission of your choice. Robin, Leslie, Sabrina, thank you guys so much. I I love that we get to close this month out with you three wonderful women. And I just want you guys to know that you mean so much to me. I love every single one of you. And I look forward to talking to you guys soon. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us. This has been a very, very good show. We've learned so much today, and it's just great. Please remember to love somebody out there because somebody out here loves you. Always, always make sure nobody has to go it alone when we all come together. If you have an extra hoodie in your closet that doesn't fit, throw it in your car. Make sure you have it. You see somebody struggling with the cold, give them that hoodie. It doesn't fit you. It's not doing any good. Just make sure that you're trying to help somebody defeat the cold out there. If you have extra food that, you're not going to eat, throw it in an old butter bowl. Heat it up. Give it to somebody who's battling with hunger. Money isn't everything. Money's important, but let's make sure that we're taking care of the little things. We need to make sure that we're taking care of each other by taking care of others. So please remember, we can all do this. All we have to do is come together. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Stepping out of her fear, bring me home. Out alone, show me the way. You wanna be a part of Sunset Boulevard.